The always unique Baz Luhrmann directs his first feature film in almost 10 years with the new biopic about the king. Let's talk about Elvis. Hey guys, Dan here. This is Dan Reviews It. Welcome to my spoiler-free review for the new movie Elvis, directed and co-written by Baz Luhrmann, who has brought us Romeo plus Juliet, The Great Gatsby, Moulin Rouge, and only a couple of others. He only has a handful of movies under his belt. He takes his time crafting them, and the result, I think, love it or hate it, is always pretty unique, and it does not stop with this one. Elvis is the movie. Before we dive into it, I do want to welcome you into Dan Reviews It. Thanks for finding this video and my channel. Please consider subscribing down below there. Would love to have you aboard, and comment too. What did you think of this movie? Are you a fan of Elvis? Are you a fan of Baz Luhrmann? Are you a fan of Tom Hanks? Who isn't? But let me know in the comments if you liked this movie. So, I mentioned Tom Hanks. He plays Colonel Tom Parker, who is the very famous manager of Elvis for many, many years, over 20 years, actually, until Elvis's death in the 70s, the same year I was born, actually, 1977. So, look, I sort of put the moniker before most of my movie reviews, spoiler-free review. But, look, this is a biopic about Elvis, so I don't know that there's any true, total bombshells here. I think Elvis is a figure that we have known a lot about for a long time, certainly my whole life. And like I mentioned, he never even lived when I lived, but I know a lot about Elvis. And so before I start in on this movie directly, a little bit of background about my history with the king. I'm not a huge Elvis fan. I get it. I understand the appeal. Certainly, I understand, the nature of, back in the 1950s, it was, Perry Como and Frank Sinatra, and all of a sudden, this guy comes around very attractive, shaking his hips, and singing these rock and roll songs. I totally get it. But look, I feel like that was more a product of that era. And I think even my parents' era, because they were born in 50 and 51, I think for them, the Beatles were really it. And by the time the Beatles came around, Elvis sort of gets shunted to the side for many people. And they touch on that very, very briefly, all too briefly, in my opinion, in this movie, sort of the Beatlemania effect on Elvis's career. But by and large, this is a person who I know plenty of his songs, probably 30 or 40 of his songs. I have a few of his, greatest hits CDs. But, he's not somebody that I normally, would listen to or whatever. But if he came on the radio, okay, cool. If I was listening to the oldie station and Jailhouse Rock came on, fine, I'm on board. So this movie, though, as everything that we've sort of heard from Elvis's life over the years and everything we know of him and how he looks and how he sounds and the certain things that happen to him along the way. Baz touches on some of these things, really most of these things, I should say, but some are in more detail than others. This is a 2-hour and 40-minute movie, and I think the biggest problem with it is that length, and not necessarily because it's 2 hours, 40 minutes. In fact, in the earlier parts of the movie, I should say, when we skip ahead literally 10 years and sort of just give us a couple of, headlines or whatever, and all of a sudden we're in 1968, it's like, oh, okay, what the heck happened? I thought to myself, there is so much about this guy's life. They really could have made a 6 or 8 hour miniseries, about Elvis. And I feel the opposite a lot of times. I watch 8 or 10 hour miniseries and I'm like, well, that could have been a 3-hour movie. They strung it out so long. But dude, there's so much about this guy that is not covered in this movie. And then once we finally get to some of the later years with his stints in Vegas, the movie really slows down. And not only that, but we lose a lot of the Baz Luhrmann isms of the beginning of the movie. The flashy, things on the screen saying what town we're in or what year we're in. We see a lot of bright colors. And I get it, the beginning of Elvis's life was certainly brighter than his later years. I got that. But even down to the point of, Baz likes to put current music in with his movies. Like Moulin Rouge takes place in 1900, and all of a sudden they're singing Nirvana. Great Gatsby takes place in 1929 or something, or 25, and we hear Jay-Z hip-hop in it. Here, there's a couple of scenes where we do hear current day hip hop songs, and then that's it. We do it like twice, I think. No more. So Baz Luhrmann did not sort of go all the way like he usually does. And I think that's a little bit of a detriment to the movie. Even the beginning of the movie, it's so sparkly with the WB logo, and it looks a lot like The Great Gatsby. And I was like, okay, here we go. Now we're getting into the Baz nature of everything. And look, for me, I am love it or hate it with Baz Luhrmann. Great Gatsby, I think, more than most. Romeo plus Juliet, I liked a lot when I was a kid, when I saw it in theaters. Claire Danes, I loved her from So-Called Life, and Leo, who didn't love him? But then I watched it again last year to review it for the anniversary, and it was horrible. Baz missed the mark on that one, and I just didn't get it when I was a kid. But this one gives us a lot of that stuff, and Tom Hanks as Colonel Tom Parker, he is having fun with the role. We don't usually see Tom in a more villainous role. And, and what's nice about this character is he was a real person. So he's not like a mustache twirling villain, like, oh, I'll get you, Elvis. No, we see some abusive nature things between the two of them that I think Elvis didn't pick up on because he was a bit naive at the time. And that was more of, that era. But we see as we go along, okay, no, he really is kind of the villain of this story. And Tom Hanks plays it very well because it's a little bit leaning into the camp nature of that character, especially as we see Tom Hanks with like a fat face suit and everything. But as we get more into the darker elements of the movie in the Vegas stuff, we sort of drop that camp, or Tom Hanks does, I should say, and we see more of the true villainous nature of Tom Parker. So, but look, the one thing I haven't talked about, and it's because I'm saving the best for last, Austin Butler plays Elvis here, and I was not aware of this person. I've seen a few things that he's been in. He had a minor role in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. He's done a couple of TV things, but for the most part, he was completely unfamiliar to me. Oh my God, does this guy nail it? I mean, this is one of the best music biopic performances I've ever seen. Now, as far as the singing, he does all of the early stuff on his own, and then in the later years, because I think he's only in his 20s himself. So in the later Elvis years, they did a mix of Elvis recordings and Austin Butler's voice and sort of blended those together. The result is outstanding. I mean, if this guy, I know it's a little early in the year, usually the Oscars don't look at summer movies, but this guy, for my money, absolutely far and away the best performance of the year from anybody. This is so good. I want him to be nominated for all the awards come Oscar season. Now, there may be better performances yet to come that I haven't seen yet, but this guy deserves to be at least in the conversation. He was phenomenal. So that's sort of my dilemma with this movie, because I think there's a lot of good things about it, and him being the main one. He's got those moves down, and the voice, the speaking voice and the singing voice. And when I saw the poster, I didn't think he looked that much like him, but boy, does he embody him, head to toe. Just fantastic. So love that. That's the best part of the movie. But yeah, this is the type of movie that has many flaws, and I've listed off some of them for you. But it's also good enough that you are able, or at least I was able, to look over a lot of those flaws. The only flaw I really can't overlook is that length, and the amount of time we spend once he gets his Vegas run. I think the movie really, really grinds to almost a halt at that point. I would have preferred, maybe, instead of glossing over most of the 60s, let's talk a little bit about his film career. Let's talk a little bit about the hit records he did have against the Beatles, and how Beatlemania and the British invasion affected his record sales. just a little bit. I don't need a ton, but, because I think it's stuff that we all sort of are aware of. And maybe that's why Luhrmann decided not to sort of go there. He's like, oh, well, people get it. They remember Elvis did the beach movies. Okay, maybe, but, this stuff happened 60 years ago. So some of your audience isn't going to know that. All they may know about Elvis is Lilo and Stitch. So it's possible that we could have maybe taken more time in that arena and less on the back end. But I don't regret watching it. We started this almost at midnight, me and my friends, and I sort of was thinking, oh man, a 2-hour and 40-minute movie, like, what is this going to be? I got to work the next day. But by the end of it, it was almost 3 a.m, and we all were like, yeah, that was good enough, to stay up late for. I had a lot of fun with this movie, especially that first half, or even I would say first 2/3. But yeah, this Austin Butler, man, he needs to be nominated for sure. So this maybe is the first movie on Oscar Watch for 2022, if you want to call it that. But I'm going to leave the movie as, on the whole, I'm going to leave Elvis with a B. I really want to give it that B+, but it just drags a little too much at the end for me. And this guy's life was so amazing and impressive, and I really would have liked a 6-hour, mini series of this. And then, sure, we could drag the Vegas part out a little bit. But compared to everything else, it just seemed too long in the scope of things. So, all right, that will do it. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see everybody next time. Bye.